Hi, everybody, and welcome to a bonus episode of Wild Wild Podcast. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to Elia Fèrroli, who is the managing director, I suppose I could say, of a
Yeah,
company.
managing director. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say. Hello, all. Hello, everybody.
Hi. So you run a company called Malombra Films, and you've recently launched a campaign to restore a film, an Italian film, which we can talk about more in a minute. And you've got other films lined up, it would seem. So there's quite a few things I'd love to talk
Yeah.
to you about. But I suppose my first question, first thing I'd like to ask you is, can you tell me a little bit about Malombra Films? What is that? Where does the name come from? Is it connected to the 1942 movie Malombra?
Um, yeah. Malombra Films, first of all, started as a university project. I'm a University of Bristol graduate, and for my last year of studies, my master, my project was centered around the distribution of genre films,
Mm,
because above all the kind of films of the past, genre films are the ones that are getting more interest out of people. Which is, it's curious because if you see this kind of films, are those films that did probably quite poorly when they were released in the first place, and now they're getting people, and they're getting an interest that they didn't have back then. So that was the topic of my discussion. And being Italian myself, I said, look, Elia, there's a lot of people that are interested in Italian films. There's a lot of wonderful Italian genre films that are not celebrated in my country, first of all, but they are liked and rediscovered in other countries like the UK, especially. So Malombra Film started with that. It started like an idea of taking those films back to their public, and our mission is to find films that have never been restored before. So all the restoration we will make in the future, and all the releases that we will release in 4K, hopefully, are world premiere films. They've not been restored digitally beforehand.
mm,
So difficult task, but I would say not impossible. It's quite challenging, and that's why I found it intriguing. That's why I like it. And the name Malombra, um, that's another thing. It's not a lot to do with the film, but it's more to do with the book. Malombra is a 19th century Italian book by Antonio Fogazzaro, which just to me, I would say, because no one else would say this, probably not even no critic would say this, but I find it a genre book.
mm,
To me, it's the first Gothic that landed in Italy. And I loved it. I grew up with it, and I grew up with this version of the book of the 70s, with this creepy picture of a lady in white, and so it was a name that stuck with me for a long
mm.
time.
Okay.
And when I was making something that had to do with genre filmmaking, I said, my biggest inspiration since I was a child, let's call it Malombra.
Fair enough. And so the selection, I'm obviously, as you mentioned, Italian cult cinema has probably never been more popular than it is now, and sort of restoring and finding films. And there are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies that were made in especially the 60s and 70s. It was a really prolific period in Italy, and especially for genre film. So, first of all, how have you decided which films that you wanted to go with first? And then, I suppose, how do you find the rights? How do you find the elements to films? If I could mention, so on your website, you have three movies that you've mentioned that you want to to bring back. One is a film called The Sex of Angels, which is what your current funding campaign is about. You've also got one called The Vampire of the Opera, and one that perhaps most people will be familiar with, which is the Mario Bava Western, the road to Fort Alamo. So how did you settle on those three to get things started?
So they are three completely different films made in a 8-year span from one another, really. The idea behind it is that to make Malombra more interesting than other brands, what I'd like to do is divide it in volumes. And what a volume is a selection of films. They can vary in number, but they explore a theme, a time, or a filmmaker. That's the topic of this first releases. Really, is exploring Italy in the 60s, and especially genre filmmaking in Italy in the 1960s. So I wanted to choose films that are completely different from one another. As you said, The Sex of Angels is an erotic film, is a thriller film. It's kind of a proto-giallo film. Then there's a western, there's a spaghetti western, and then you go down to the horror route with the Renato Polselli film. So I chose three films. And, initially the idea was, oh, let's focus on horror, let's focus on western, or let's focus on the erotic. And those three films were in my mind all along because I knew their potential. I knew how much people want to see them again because there's Mari Baba is a world-renowned filmmaker nowadays. So a film, a Mari Baba film, newly restored, it's always a good idea. And Renato Polselli, his films were quite successful in the recent years as well. But especially the first release, and that's why I chose it to be the first, The Sex of Angels, is because I have this this particular love for filmmakers that are not well known, for people that had a lot to say, and they said it really well. Like in The Sex of Angels, I think is a beautiful film. And other Liberatore films, I think, are really, really nice films. But they never got that interest out of audiences like Mario Bava or Renato Polselli did. So yeah, this is the reason why The Sex of Angels is the first release, I'd say. I'm gonna try to explore more the topic probably in the near future with some curator, so some people that can talk about the 60s in Italy, the time of change that Italy is going through, the filmmaking industry in Italy at the time, which it started to flourish, and then it culminates in the early 70s with the Giallo cinema. I wanted to explore the theme especially. That's why those three.
How does one find the rights holders for these films that are more than 50 years old now? And then how do you find film elements and, like the practical side of it? How does it work?
So it is a long process. It's a very long process. It's a process that entails a lot of waiting, a lot of trying and keep trying over and over. What I do mostly, I'm an aficionado of Italian archives. So every time I can find an archive, I look at what they have. Especially things that I'm not supposed to look at, really, because there's a lot of films that have been even forgotten by their own owners most of the time. So this was not the case actually with those three films, because I contacted the copywriters from Rome. I'm still in contact with them for future releases as well. They had all the negatives in place, so we are restoring all from original negatives, which is great. They are beautifully preserved. Another thing that I like to say, yeah, they've been taken care of.
Mm.
in all those years, and they are part of this private library, really, that belong to a family from Rome, a family of lawyers from Rome, who have the passion of filmmaking. With their background in law and in rights and in distribution, along the years from the 50s to the 80s, they acquired a few titles, a bunch of titles that are really interesting.
Mm.
I met those people really randomly while working as a filmmaker. Um, I'm a filmmaker most of the time, let's say,
Okay.
and in my spare time, I deal with Malombra because it's my passion is to bring those films back to life. And when I found out that they had those titles, I was very excited, and that was it. And that was the choice made very suddenly, very quickly, and I didn't hesitate for a minute, and I'm pretty happy I did.
Mm. So, how do you go about actually getting these negatives scanned and restored? Are you doing this through, is it Bologna or is it somewhere in
No,
Rome? How
I'm
are you
not going
doing
through Bologna. I'm going through Cinecittà Studios in Rome,
it? Okay.
because I worked with them in the past as an assistant producer,
Oh, nice.
and for some minor films. But I've seen their laboratories before, and I've seen the care and the patience that they take in doing their work. So, also another thing I would say, because the negatives were stored in Rome, it was an easier thing to do.
Mm.
I do not tend to, and I do not like really transporting original negatives.
Mm.
When I can, I try to do the things in one place.
Hmm.
So it's going to be done through their facilities. There are experts there. There are going to be 4 people working on each film. And how the process works basically is that the original negative is taken, it's washed in chemicals to remove all the bacteria and all the dust particles on it, and then it's scanned digitally in 4K. And the last part is basically a color correction, which happens digitally,
Yeah.
and a sound mixing, a final sound mixing, to check if there's any mistake or error or any bit that is missing, that is going
Mm.
missing through the years. I've seen all the negatives. I'm pretty excited, especially for the Mario Bava film, The Road to Fort Alamo, because you can clearly see that the negatives are old. The boxes containing the negatives are old. Everything was old where I found it. You can smell the metal. You can smell
Mm.
the chemicals of the negatives, and it was quite exciting because I'm a huge Mario Bava fan. I thought, oh, maybe Mario touched those, and
Yeah.
that for me was an experience. And yeah, I'm also trying to work with Lamberto Bava,
Oh,
Mario
great.
Bava's son,
Yeah.
to make sure that the final restoration of the Road to Fort Alamo is 100% like the original,
Mm.
not censored, and with all the scenes on their own place. Because it wasn't a filmed. It's not a film that is particularly famous of his, really, but it's interesting to see as like an auteur like Mario Bava explores Western, which is
Hmm.
something that he doesn't usually do. It's not a Sergio Leone or a Sergio Corbucci. There's a lot of interesting things in that film, especially
Mm.
for. Sorry, I'm going off track here,
No,
but
it's okay.
I love the use of light in that film because it's typical of Mario Bava using this quite unnatural light, natural lighting on the set. And it's kind of weird to think that a Western set is all in open air. It's not, uh, and he manages to do that,
Mm.
even with a set that is not the Gothic manor, the house of Shock or Kill Baby Kill.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, especially for a Mario Bava fan. I think they will enjoy it a lot.
And obviously, with Bava's westerns, they tend to get talked down, and I think some of that comes from Tim Lucas's book on Bava. They're kind of downplayed as, oh, Mario Bava couldn't really do westerns. And I'm currently reading a new book on Bava by an academic called Leon Hunt, who we interviewed on our other podcast, and he's talking about the westerns in there as well. And and again, they're not generally talked about in particularly glowing terms in relation to Bava's other films. But I wonder whether partly that's because people haven't been able to see them very well over the years. They've had these quite cheap DVD releases and so on. So hopefully a full restoration, as you've been saying, will allow people to see these films as they're supposed to be seen and gain a more sort of full appreciation for what Bava was doing.
Definitely, because as you know, Bava is about atmosphere. Most of all, really, above it's atmosphere above plot, above performances, above everything. And I would say that a Mario Bava film needs to be restored to be enjoyed. I cannot think of watching a VHS copy of Blood and Black Lace and enjoy it as much as a Blu-ray 4K copy. It's something different. So what you say is absolutely right. I hope people are gonna enjoy it as much as I did, because I love Mario Bava gothic films and horror films. I was quite surprised actually when I watched The Road to Fort Alamo the first time, because it's very entertaining, and I think the action sequences are really well done, especially for the era. We're talking about 1964, and if you compare it to other spaghetti western of the same time, I think there's a much more cleverer use of the physicality of the performances and the atmosphere, as we said, and it's more all round than other spaghetti western I've seen of that time, and I hope people can rediscover the Bava western.
Road to Fort Alamo. Cards could hold the balance between a fortune and sudden death.
What have you got that handkerchief out for, mister?
What do you think it's for?
An ace, maybe. Listen to this, you saddle tramp. No one's ever accused Mr. Silver of cheating, and if someone had, he wouldn't be alive to talk about it. I'll give you 1 minute to get out of here, to mount up and ride out of town. I suggest you not show your face in these parts again. You might end up worse off. Luckily for you, my doctor forbid me to do any killing today. Go on, get out.
With these men came a new kind of law, where, when tempers ran high, a man's life depended on how fast he could draw, or how fast he could throw a knife. An unforgettable story of courage and love, which will grip your imagination. The Road to Fort Alamo. A stirring saga of adventure from the Old West, as an isolated group of white men, trapped by an overwhelming horde of savage Indians, fight desperately to the last man. The Road to Fort Alamo, where one man struggles with his conscience and is betrayed by greed and the prospect of easy money.
Lieutenant's uniform's gone to your head. We'll divide it when and how I decide.
Listen to this, you murderer. I would prefer you to cut off my right arm up to here, rather than split the money when you decide. Bud! You bunch of yellow belly! Bud! The Road to Fort Alamo.
brutal and moving film, one you will not want to miss. Relive with all the danger and breathtaking excitement of the Old West. The Road to Fort Alamo.
So let's talk about The Sex of Angels, which is your current fundraising campaign is towards that restoration. So this was a film that I was not aware of at all, and I imagine a lot of people have perhaps not really come across this one before. So can you sell it to us? Tell us about The Sex of Angels and why we should want to see it.
So why you should see The Sex of Angels? There's a lot of reasons, I would say. I start from the boring bit of The Sex of Angel, and that's why I find it so interesting, is that it's a 1968 film. And 1968 is a year that changed everything. What The Sex of Angel is about this everything. So there's a change of the way people see femininity and the way people see women in society. And 3 women are the protagonists of this film. There's is the year of sexual liberation, and this film is about sexuality quite a lot. It doesn't go too much into the Tinto Brass details of it, but it's very classy. It's very well done, and it's an erotic film with a very classy touch. And it's also about drugs, because that's what the 1968 movement is also about. It's about LSD, it's about the change of perception, a change of people that want to see things differently, they want to see the world differently. And because of all these reasons, I think The Sex of Angel encapsulates this era, this movement of sexual liberation into an hour and a half. It's marvelous for that, because all those elements are together in a very interesting story. I love the dialogue of the film. I think it's amazingly written. The director, he has done wonderful works, and he's not given credit for a lot of his films. And I recommend people to go and check him out, because he was a really great guy.
This is Ugo Liberatore.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting as well, because if you take The Sex of Angels, it's not a standalone film really. There's another film called Bora Bora that he made in the same year, so it's 1968. Which goes very close with the topic of The Sex of Angels. So we're talking about women, we're talking about not the Mediterranean in case of Bora Bora, but other part of the world, by the sea. There's this sexual tension between characters. There's this the story that becomes almost a thriller by the end of it. There's this change of genre in both films, and they're a pair of films. And I would like this is what I want to say also on my social media. I would like to bring Bora Bora back as well when I find it. This is the problem. When I find it, I like to bring this film back. For everyone, it's a wonderful film. It's really a lost gem. There's a lot of the typical kind of exploitation elements in it. So of course there's drug use, nudity, and all the colorful scenes that one would expect from that era in that kind of film. But it's very touching, it's moving, it's cleverly written, it's well acted, and it's something that it's worth rediscovering. Another thing that I want to say about Malombra is that we are going through a lot of different films that have not been digitally restored in high definition, and we go through a very lengthy process of selection. So we're trying to bring the best films of the undiscovered one.
So is The Sex of Angels, is this your first sort of fundraising, crowdsourcing title, or have you done this before and I just missed it?
No, this is the first title I am fundraising.
Okay.
Is the first title of our company as well.
Right. So why this one first, rather than something like the Barber film, which is perhaps better known?
I wanted to test the audience. I wanted to see. I wanted to see really what they think of the importance of lost films, and a lot of people are online with me. They think that it's worth bringing those back, and it's worth even pushing the boundaries a bit and getting to that zone that may seem uncomfortable at first, but at the same time you're trying something new. You're trying something that you don't know what to expect. We hope to bring the best of this unexpected. So that's why mainly I want to do a title that people never heard of before. And it went really well. I would say out of the three films, which is the film with the lesser known director, is the one that got the most interest out of the audience, which I'm pretty happy about.
And so, if when this one is completed, is The Road to Fort Alamo going to be your next film, or will it be the
Vampire of the Opera? The Road to Fort Alamo is going to go next.
Okay.
I am working right now because all the graphics, all the designs of the Blu-rays, the posters, and the digital graphic for The Sex of Angels are complete. We're going to go through restoration very soon, and it's going to be ready fairly soon. Right. I'm now working on everything that is the graphic part of The Road to Fort Alamo. So it's going to be our next release. We're still going to do a crowdfunding campaign for this, and there's going to be a campaign for each of the three films.
Okay.
This will give people the chance of getting, the limited edition of each one of them. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a good way also to test the waters and see what people think of them, how people receive them. It's a good idea for me to start like this. We're probably not going to do crowdfunding campaign for the new features after those three.
Okay.
But I like people to take participation, especially into our first steps in the business.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning, but your company comes out of Bristol. Like you mentioned, you're at Bristol Uni. You're currently based in Lake Garda. I think you said you moved between the two, which is fun. So with these releases, are they going to be aimed at what sort of territory are you releasing them in? Are these English-friendly releases with English on the covers, or are they being released in Italy and then people will have to import them.
The territory we are going to deal with is the UK. So this is going to be the place for our releases. But I have to say, for everyone that is listening to us from other countries, the crowdfunding campaign are a way of getting it wherever you are. Because just for the crowdfunding, the limited editions are available worldwide. So this is worth mentioning. After that, the official releases are going to be available for the UK only, and we hope to see that interest in the UK from our audience that is gonna, open up new territories. We're thinking about Italy and the US next, but yeah, for the moment, the UK.
Right, that's great. So we haven't mentioned, other than the name, do you want to tell me a little bit about The Vampire of the Opera? You've got a teaser trailer, and I'll put the links to all these in the show notes, but you've got a teaser trailer on your site, which is hilarious. It's a really striking looking film. It reminds me of other films from around that time, like The Vampire and the Ballerina, and that sort of thing. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that movie and why you like it.
So, The Vampire of the Opera, or The Monster of the Opera, or The Orgy of the Vampire. There's a lot of titles. As,
of course.
It happened quite a lot with those films. It's interesting. It's a very interesting film because it's Italian, but it's very American looking. Which I find really interesting. There's a lot of films of that time. It's set in Italy with Italian actors who have Italian names or playing Italian characters, but there's kind of an American feeling. A musical. It's a musical. I would say it's a musical, really, nice. With a vampire and lesbian ballerinas that dance around, and it's wonderful. It's a mix of insanity. It's a Renato Porcelli film, who's the director of The Vampire and the Ballerina, and the director of other films that now the name in English it's what is it called? Sorry. Black Magic Rites, for example, is another Renato Porcelli film, or Delirium. I would say Porcelli is a delirious director. He is an early Jess Franco. He's someone that doesn't give you something that is an in-between. It's all or nothing. And I would say The Vampire of the Opera, it's all the things you can think of. And you wouldn't expect it in an early 60s film. That's another interesting aspect of it. There's some pretty graphic scenery as a matter of nudity and violence and the dialogue, which, it seems like it doesn't really belong to a film that was really made in 1961. So pretty early. If you think that people thought that Night of the Living Dead was outrageous in 1968, and 7 years before you have this monster chaining women to a basement and eating them alive and possessing them and making love to them, and while there's people playing a musical on top of the crypt, it's an interesting watch. I love Porcelli because I think there's a lot of freedoms. There's a lot of freedom in his film, in his films. There's a lot of this kind of ingenuity of a young filmmaker that just wants to make horror in Italy. And that was a bit of an insane choice to be made back then. But he did it, and he did it his own way. And you can see that 100% in the film.
L'orgie des vampires. Non, pas ça! Non, pas ça! Non! L'aventure la plus extraordinaire, écrite sur la réincarnation d'un homme. D'un homme trahi par une femme. Ouais, cette fois-ci, moi je serai contre toi. L'orgie des vampires. Du fantastique à la terreur.
De vous en aller, croyez-moi, avant que les portes de ce théâtre ne se ferment à jamais.
Dans une ambiance de folie, de sexe et de désir.
Moi, je couche avec toi.
Lily. Lily, comment peux-tu être aussi cynique?
J'aime Fèrroli. Non, je ne ferai jamais. Laisse-la, Lily.
Un film plein d'audace. Des filles belles et perverses.
Les borlards, on les lui. Laissez-moi, je vous en supplie.
Ne manquez pas de voir le plus envoûtant des films terreur sexe. L'orgie des vampires. Un film de mystère, de magie, d'érotisme. Vous viendrez voir l'orgie des vampires.
Excellent. You've definitely sold it to me. That sounds like a fun one. I mean, I love the vampire and the ballerina. So yeah,
think of the vampire and ballerina on steroids.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
So are you in a position to be able to mention any other films that you want to work on in the future, or is that top secret?
I'm trying to keep it top secret.
Okay.
I can give you a hint. Our new volume after those 360s film is going to focus on a filmmaker. And we are confronting a bit of choices at the moment.
Okay.
There's some really cool filmmakers that, they're all pretty, I wouldn't say unknown, but lesser known. Don't expect people like Bava Argento, Fulci, and the majors of Italian.
Sure. I mean, those guys are well taken care of.
Exactly.
With other companies.
We're trying to do something that is, people that should be known but are not. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to go across genres again, all from a filmmaker, and it's going to span in a 20 years time. So we're going to see film of the 60s, we're going to see film of the 80s. I find it, I think people will find it interesting because when you are confronting yourself with the same director and his style or her style that is evolving through the years, you grow with the style watching the film. There's something that you acquire more than watching just one film by this director. This is gonna be it. Sorry, I cannot give any titles at the moment or anything, but it's a bit of a hint there, something.
That's very cool. Well, I'm sure you've got lots of ideas, but some of the films that we've covered on the podcast are still very much in need of official releases. So I thought maybe I could hit you with a couple of potential titles. So, you've already mentioned Mario Bava. One of his very early films was The Day the Sky Exploded, or La Morte Viene dallo Spazio. That one is still not available anywhere. Or how about some Franco and Ciccio films? Have you thought about
Franco and Ciccio films?
Yeah,
that's interesting that you say that. They are funny films, definitely. It's comedy is not really my thing personally, as a matter of taste, but also when you delve into Italian comedy, there's always the chance of getting something that is just for an Italian audience. This is it's a great risk, but of course, there's a lot of interesting film out there. There are Italian comedies that are worth rediscovering. I just need to, to test the waters, see what people think of Italian comedy before going for it.
Because we did a whole season on Italian sci-fi, and one of my favorite films was another one that doesn't have an official release at the moment, from 1981 by Vito Albertini, called Escape from Galaxy 3,
which I've not seen.
It's amazing. Giochi erotici nella terza galassia. And it's absolutely hilarious. But it borrows quite a lot of footage from Luigi Cozzi's Star Crash. And just sort of throws in loads of stuff from Star Crash. It's really funny. But again, I don't know how well it would carry. Yeah,
I'd love to see it, and I'm always I'm always in need of suggestions. So, for example, one of the first things I did on my social media was asking people, what would you like to see? Yeah. What are films that you have never seen on Blu-ray or on digital? What are films that you want to be taken back to life? And I got quite a lot of responses with that.
Oh, good.
And so I'm open to people suggesting new films. I'm really excited when there's something I don't know, like this film you said. I really want to see it now, especially because Star Crash is my guilty pleasure, really.
Oh, yeah. You don't need to feel guilty about Star Crash,
especially because I work with Luigi.
Wow! Okay.
I worked with him on a short film a couple of years ago. And I was his assistant director, and it's been a lot of fun times talking to him about the films he made, because I was talking for hours to him about Paganini horror, which I love, and and there were a lot of interesting things that he said about the filmmaking process on that, and Star Crash, and Hercules, and a lot of other films.
Luigi Cozzi is a great guy. I've been to his Profondo Rosso store a few times.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going back in about a month.
Nice.
So I'm hoping to see him again and get some more autographs. But yeah, I love Star Crash.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have a Luigi Cozzi mini season on the podcast.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
In a couple of months. Because to show some of his sort of lesser known films that we don't talk about so much, like Paganini horror.
But I'll let Luigi know, because I think he will be, you'd be overjoyed about this. He loves when people, talk about his films and carry on what he started with the sci-fi in Italy.
Yeah, no, he's great. We also talked about some of the Decameratici films, the films that were, the sort of sexy comedies that came from the Decameron trilogy. And we watched some of those on the podcast. But again, Italian comedy has this sort of reputation as not transferring to English-speaking audiences. It is, but I found them absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, no, I see. But it's very much like I don't know how to explain it really. It would be like watching a typical English TV show. Comedy TV show, like Fawlty Towers, for example, and have that translated to an Italian audience. It's funny to me. It's hilarious, but I live in the UK, and I've been living in the UK for quite a while. I know the kind of cultural, comedic aspects of that apply to the English people, and it's the same. It's difficult to translate for someone that is not so used to that kind of comedic language. But definitely there is a lot of the Italian sexy comedy, the commedia sexy, is it's full of films that have not been restored, and there are some magnificent one. For example, for people who love Hedwig Fenech,
Yes.
she's not only the goddess of giallo to me, but also the goddess of the Italian sexy comedy.
Absolutely, because we did the first one that we did was Ubalda, All Naked and Warm.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is her movie, and she's great. She's such a obviously she's very beautiful, but she's also a natural at comedy. She's so good at it.
Yeah, definitely.
And, yeah, that's what's great about these movies is you see all these faces that we know of from giallo films, like Barbara Boucher turns up in them, and just and obviously the directors, many of them did giallos and comedies and poliziotteschi films.
Yeah, Sergio Martino is a great example.
Yeah,
he went from great giallos to great comedies, and kept on switching between the two. It's something that describes a bit Italian society to me as well.
Okay.
You know, this going back and forth between the darkest side and the more funny and comedic one.
Mm-hmm.
And Mario Bava is the prime example of this, I think. Mario Bava horror films are quite funny sometimes, and there's an element of comedy in all of them.
Yeah.
And I remember this quote from Mario Bava I read on an interview where he was asked why Italians are not good at making horror films. They were asking this in the early 60s, and he said, because it's too sunny here. It's always sunny. You need to make horror films in the UK, you know, where it's cloudy and rainy. That's more. It suits more the vibe. But it's the mix of, you know, going back to the comedies you said, and those directors they made both, and they interchange between those two very easily. So yeah, comedy. I would love to restore some comedies. Really, I'm gonna see what people think. I need to see if people are gonna have a positive reaction to it. I'm very, very happy.
I mean, maybe those would be more for the Italian domestic market.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, just look at how many Franco and Ciccio films Lucio Fulci made. He did loads of those things.
Yeah.
We watched one because there's one called Operazione Luna where they go to space.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't have any kind of official release anywhere, but we managed to get a copy, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was very funny. But Franco and Ciccio have this reputation, I think, because of Bava's film about Dr. Goldfoot and the girl bombs, which again is one of Bava's less well-regarded films, and I think Franco and Ciccio are blamed for that. But
I would say it's an interesting one because also I think it stars. Is it Vincent Price or Christopher Lee?
Yeah, the Goldfoot one. Yeah, Vincent Price.
Which is quite interesting as an Italian comedy, you know, that time having Vincent Price in it. It's kind of a weird film for the Mario Bava. I wouldn't say it's a bad film. It's just a film that is not his usual. That's why people look a bit down on it.
They just want to get straight to the horror. I think when you mention Bava, they just want to see gothic horror.
Yeah. It's the same as, you know, you watch a Fulci and you don't see any eye pop out. It's it's strange. It's I mean, I could give you so many films that I would love to see released. I would like to hear more.
I won't do it all on the podcast because it'll bore the listeners. But I'm a big fan of Antonio Margheriti as well. Yeah. And there are lots of his films that have not been restored or released that I think would be worthy candidates as well.
Yeah, but, I would say one of our ideas is bring back 2 Margheriti films. I'm not going to say anything more.
Okay. Well, well, in that case, if I could put in a word for Nude Si Muore, Naked You Die, that's high on my list of films that we need. And I'm partly biased because I'm friends with the star of the movie, Sally Smith. Oh. So I'd love to see that film get restored for her, if nothing else.
Yeah, no, definitely. But Antonio Margheriti, Such an interesting director. Love the very Hollywood-like style of his films, but still not American films, very Italian films with a Hollywood touch to it.
Yeah.
Did a lot of films, made a lot of films. As you said, most of them still to be recovered, really, from obscurity. Definitely one of the most interesting directors out there. I think Margheriti is going to be, in this sense of rediscovery, the new Dario Argento.
Oh, good.
In the near future, because we basically consumed all the Argento films now and all the Fulcis. We need to find someone new.
That's true.
And
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, as I said, that's our mission, really. It's the bringing back from obscurity. That's what our logo stands for as well. You have this skeleton hand emerging from the darkness of the ground.
Yeah.
I
was going to mention that.
Something that wants to come back to life.
Yeah, it's a very cool logo.
Oh, thank
you. What is the best way for people to find out more about what you're doing?
So our Facebook page and our Instagram page, they have constant updates on what we're doing. Once the Blu-rays are available, we are going to be on Amazon and hopefully with some other resellers as well, international resellers. Another thing that it's worth saying is that I want to bring those films back where cinema belongs, which is the movie theater. So the rights we have for those films include VOD for streaming and also include theatrical releases,
nice.
which is what I'm mostly interested in. I'm trying to arrange something in Bristol. So for everyone that is from Bristol, I would say, come along. I'd like to have an event night in which we are showing The Sex of Angels restored in 4K, talk about the films, hopefully have some guests talking about it. And I want to do this across the UK. So not only the Blu-ray, which they're going to have a lot of extras, they're going to have a lot of interesting insights into the film, and of course a beautiful new version of it, and the edition, I'm pretty happy with it, is coming together really well. But also, come along to the theaters and watch film in a theater, which is a shared experience. Is the best way of seeing it.
Great. So that's so sort of film festivals and things like that where we could see some of these movies.
We are talking about that. Mainly now private theaters, but also film festivals. Yes, definitely. Nothing is fixed in stone, set in stone right now. But it's a route that we are going to go through, definitely, as well.
Great. That's really cool. Just before we finish, and this is perhaps just more for me than anyone else, but just tell me a little bit about Lake Garda.
Lake Garda. Oh, okay. So, Lake Garda, I grew up around this area, which is this beautiful area between Milan and Verona, really, on the west coast of Lake Garda, really, the west side of Lake Garda. I love it here. It's the nature is amazing. You have a beautiful sun, which I miss a lot when in the UK, I have to say. I come here to regain my vitamin D. Really recommend you coming here. It's a wonderful place, and many people don't know this, but there's a lot of very famous Italian actors and actresses that live around here. For example, if you know Fabio Testi from the Poliziotteschi or the Giallo, like What Have You Done to Solange? He lives in Peschiera, which is a 5 minutes drive from where I am. Nice. You got Erica Blank from Kill Baby Kill. She lives in my town. There's a lot of Giallo people around here, and for this reason as well, I would say I am also considering in the future, this is for the future, but it's something that it's been going on for a while, because I would like to bring some local giallo cinema of the past back here, and do something that I wouldn't call it a festival, but it resembles a festival around the lake. And I think people would enjoy it.
Oh man, I will be, as soon as you announce that, I'll be booking my ticket.
That's great. That's great. Thank you.
That would be amazing. Well, look, thanks, Elia. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us, and good luck with Malombra Films, and especially with the Sex and Angels campaign. We will look forward to seeing what happens next.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me, and bye-bye. Thank you.